the mantra which I adopted and the rest of the company did was personal growth leads to business growth.
One person in that team that doesn't turn up can destroy the equilibrium of that whole team.
It's the character or the spirit of people that make all the difference to whether the business succeeds.
You get to the ask as quickly as possible. The sale starts at the first ask.
The person at their most vulnerable gives you the most valuable information.
You need to lead with who you are and be true to who you are.
Internally, you have to take care of your own character. No one else is going to do it for you.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that works with professional services firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Joseph Pritchard, the founder and CEO of Zetetic, a consultancy firm that delivers long-term business value through strategy that affects trade, communication skill, and character. Joseph specializes in helping CEOs and business leaders find clarity by addressing what he sees as the real bottleneck in most organizations, the leader's own self-awareness and willingness to look beyond their ego. Joseph, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, primarily because it's going to be an interesting one. I think from our conversations previously, you have a really interesting take on how business owners, business leaders, CEOs, and strategic thinkers need to really be moving forward. But also your track record and the success that you've had along the way really lends itself to you being someone that knows what they're talking about, right? And so that's really interesting. But for the viewers and listeners out there who don't know who Joseph Pritchard is, can you share a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got to where you are today?
Right. Okay. How I got to where I am today. Okay. So I went to university. I did a thing called management science. So that was going to be my sort of starting point. I did 10 years roughly in FMCG brands, marketing and advertising, global brands, working out of an agency called Benson & Bowles, which was an American agency based in New York, but I was based in Knightsbridge. And then after that consumer goods experience, I then moved into business to business, and I moved into a startup situation. And there was a group of us who founded an organization that we know as contact centers today. And that grew into a international business rather than a global business. So it was in the UK, in France, we tried Spain, it didn't work out. South Africa, Australia, so we did sort of move around a bit. And the main reason really that I joined with those people was because I wanted to switch the compass to my personal growth. So when you're at school, you get a lot of input. You get a lot of input at university. When I went to work, the training programs and the input wasn't the same. It was more that they were using what you brought, the skills, your mental capacities, your energy, and that sort of thing. There's a number of reasons, but I knew I had to sort of redirect my compass in a specific way. And I got into what we would call personal growth. Yeah, personal development. And sort of the mantra which I adopted and the rest of the company did, I believe, was personal growth leads to business growth. And that has been the guiding principle of the way that I've approached things for the rest of my career. Whatever I've done, I've realized that there are things that if something's not working out, I know where to start looking. I mean, when you look at a business, you can say, well, this isn't working, that's not working. And you can get quite a long way with that, but you can't really get excellence like that. You have to look in a different area. You need a different kind of awareness. Is that a sort of an introduction? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think your natural progression to looking at personal development, I think for me as well, as someone who started his own business, is trying to grow his own business, has been growing for many years now. But I say many years, 3+ years of business growth. I 100% align with the fact that the periods of time where I took personal development seriously were the periods of time within the business which I saw the most growth and the most elements of success. And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned personal development, primarily because you can't grow without focusing on actually developing yourself, because no one's perfect from the outset, right? And so when you look at it, when you look at any kind of circumstance or environment, if you start off, no one's the end product at the start. You have to grow yourself there. But if you refrain from taking any levels of development within your personal journey, what you'll find is in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, you're in the same spot or you're making the same mistakes and things don't change. Your circumstances don't change. So I think it's really interesting you mentioned that. In terms of then, you were part of a team of founders who eventually exited, and exiting is the holy grail of most people's idea of running a business, right? You run a business, either you can have a lifestyle business or you can go into a direction of wanting to exit a business. And more people are seeing that one day, the cash exit day that comes along is the day that they're working towards. And talk to me about the success you achieved with your team in building a business all the way to exit.
Right. Okay. So I think for long periods when we started out, it was about a 14-year journey, roughly. 15, it depends upon where you kind of draw the line. And I would say for the first 10 years, we never really knew if we were going to be there the next month or not.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, we sort of took heart from a quote. I think Richard Branson said that he never made a profit for 10 years. And we took hope.
Yeah, we'll be another Branson.
There'll be another Branson. So we said, right, okay. So there is a lot of day-to-day, week-to-week when you're starting out because you don't have the cash. And unless someone's invested capital in it, you don't have the money to expand the business. And we were, I think the term is bootstrapped. We were doing everything organically, okay? So if we got trade, we got paid. And if we didn't get trade, then you can sort of finish that sentence off. And it was sort of haphazard at the beginning. Yes, it was kind of, when I say haphazard, there was a lot of energy and a lot of direction in terms of going after business, but you have to be careful what kind of business that you go after, because at one point, we had hundreds of clients, maybe thousands of clients possibly. But for the kind of services we were offering, it didn't work to set up and close down. So we get low value contracts. People would see it as list cleaning. They would see it as market research. But the real value in what we were offering, as it became clear, was how to make the business faster to market, more profitable, those sorts of things. And once we got that language right, and we got clients who understood that language, because if we're selling business process outsourcing, training, and consultancy, only a certain type of company wants to buy those services. Only a certain type of company recognizes that you need to allocate funds to those activities, right? So if you're not talking to a company that's doing 500 million or $1 billion, they haven't thought of really allocated a significant budget to training, to consultancy. I mean, they do. There are companies that, they're 100 million or 50 million or smaller, and they allocate money to consultancy now. But if you want to build a sustainable business, you need clients that you can build a sustainable business with, who are thinking that way, and who are willing to invest in their business as you're investing in them. And the big decision that I was in charge of marketing at one point, and I made the decision that we were only going to go for 60 clients. So I looked at the advertising agencies. They have international global businesses. They don't have 5,000 clients, right? They have Procter & Gamble, they have Johnson & Johnson, they have IBM, they have the food brands like Nescafe. And these people are building brands year after year after year and investing in those brands. Most big agencies like Saatchi, it still exists, UPP, Ogilvy Mather, all of those big agencies probably have about 60 clients. And they really do service those 60 clients. So we had thousands. So we took the database and we chopped, it's a bit brutal, but we said we can't survive properly and service this number of people. So we identified specifically the vertical markets and the clients in those vertical markets that we wanted. And then we researched them and went after them. And eventually we got the right kind of client list, which would sustain our growth, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And actually, it makes me think of, so I don't know if you've heard of this business content creator called Alex Hormozy, very big on the internet at the moment, is gained a lot of popularity. He was talking about a conversation he had with a private equity executive. And one of the things he actually spoke about was the fact that when they come into a business, they very quickly, what they want to do is buy the top 20 of the hundreds, 20% of the clients that you have. Who are the top 20%, right? The rest of the 80, how do you get rid of them and get more of that 20%? And that kind of leans into what you said in identifying, okay, these are the clients we want. These are the clients that are willing to spend. These are the clients that understand the problems that we are solving. And all these other clients are ungrateful for what we do, not exactly paying on time, not necessarily the right type of ICP or avatar, whatever it might be. Let's get rid of them. Maybe not overnight, but over a period of time, and get more of the right clients from the sounds of things. Is that right?
It's that kind of thinking, and you have to be quite tough about it. If you're, before contact centers existed, right, there was what was called face-to-face sales.
Good old days.
Right. There was only face-to-face sales, apart from some back office sort of systems. So the power of this lay with the face-to-face salespeople, and they weren't readily going to give that power up. Now, I'm trying to think about the link that got me onto that. There's a tremendous amount of education to do, and there's a tremendous amount of resistance from the corporate sector to something that was effectively moving through telephony into computing and eventually what we know today in this sort of digital age. They didn't all sort of volunteer and go, yeah, let's do it, right? So it was a very difficult sale in the beginning until we got our proposition right and the market recognized that's where it was going. So the attitude of the client was really important, and not everybody was there. So we talked to a lot of people that didn't really understand what we were talking about. Now that was our fault, though we took charge of that process. Yeah.
It's really interesting you mentioned that, because this is what we talk about a lot with a lot of our clients, because we focus on helping clients tap into the colder markets versus what you would typically see with professional services firms tapping into warmer markets with referrals and word of mouth growth. And one of the key things when you tap into colder markets that contact centers like yourselves will have to do is there's something what we call education-based marketing, right? Where you educate your avatar, educate your ideal customer profile in the problem, because sometimes they don't even know they have the problem. So they need to be educated on what the problem is. And then once they're educated on what the problem is, then you can get them into a position where they might be like, okay, they're more open to finding a solution for that problem. It's very difficult to get someone who isn't even aware that they have a problem to then go into buying mode, right? And so there's an education piece there. And it reminds me what you said there, back when it was face-to-face sales, right? You have to educate that individual face-to-face. And then as things evolve, feel like markets sophisticate, but that doesn't mean that the principles change, right? People still need to know what they need to be worried about or what they have a problem with and things like that. So it's interesting to hear about the evolution from your successes early to where we are at the moment and what we're seeing with our clients. So in terms of then what you're doing at the moment with Zetetic Mind, talk to me more about what you're doing right now with founders, CEOs.
Okay. So what we do is strategy. The window we go through is strategy. The reason we go through that window, I suppose it's probably worth saying something about the sort of purpose of the organization that was in fact the call center organization. I was very interested. I have to go back to playing football. And I played football all the way through my school years. But when I was 18, I managed to get myself in. We got a coach who led us to success. And the experience of having a coach who knew what they were doing was a completely different dimension. The input, not advice, the input showing us how to play to win the game, and everybody in the team wanting to win the game. And when you're playing football, which I think you do know about, you only need one person out of the 11 people not to be pulling their weight, and the thing falls apart. So to be in a winning team was an extraordinary experience. And I went from sport, which I loved when I was young, into work, and I saw the kind of opposite thing taking place. I saw the sales and marketing wars. I saw a lack of cooperation, and I thought, well, no wonder they're not winning, Now, this struck me quite deeply because I favor cooperation, if you like. I know that. So this was something that was important to me. I favored cooperation. One of the elements, now, I don't mind competition. Competition, obviously, sport is competitive. And if you're competing in a group of people that want to achieve something, it's a fantastic experience, difficult to come by. And I also wanted to know, when I was going through the brand marketing days, how did it actually work? How do you build a brand? And then when I went into business, how do you build a business? I was curious to know how it worked. I didn't just want to do it. I have that sort of inquiring sort of mind. So Zetetic, quote, for the inquiring mind. So there you have the sort of the business, the sort of business name. Naively, I wanted to change the world. So did the people that I worked with. I did, I did. Because I saw certain things taking place in work that I knew didn't work just because of what it was like working in a team that worked. And you see, I could go on about that for a long time. And there's something in me that wanted in football, you'd say that person's got spirit. That person's got pick your word, And I knew, my sense of it was that what I'm going to call character or spirit of a person that could make all the difference to winning a tackle. Just the character or the spirit, even if they couldn't run properly at that particular moment in time. And in business, I feel as though it's the same thing. It's the character or the spirit of the people that make all the difference to whether the business succeeds. Now, you need other skill sets. You need other capabilities. So we learn how to use a telephone. We learn how to use a computer. If we're a software engineer, we learn whatever it is that we have to learn. If you're in strategy, you learn whatever it is that you have to learn. But the essential ingredient is spirit, is what I'm going to take the chance, soul. And that's what gets dampened down a lot in folk when they're in a commercial environment. But it's sort of the single thing that makes for the longevity of the individuals and of the business. This is my personal opinion, which I've seen played out in sport many times. If you're in the cross-country race and you give up just before the end, you don't know whether you could have finished, you don't know. So there are lots of qualities that you draw on in life, in sport, in life. And I wanted to give those qualities a little bit more, amplify those qualities a little bit more. So in order to do that, then you have to find out a bit more about yourself as well. I didn't arrive my spirit has been the same all my life, pretty much, when it's good. And I can sort of go back to that and pull it out. But then there have been times when I've had to sort of do something with my character. So you need a lot of energy and there's playing sport. But that same energy can be frightening to people in a commercial situation. So you have to find another way of communicating. What goes on in the changing room can't really go on in the right. So you think, okay, well, perhaps I need to learn a bit about communication here if I want to get along with people, right? One of the difficulties I was in advertising, and I had a good instinct for what I was doing, but I wasn't necessarily able to articulate that instinct. And when you're in a business situation, conversation is, the name of the game. So I had to do quite a lot of work in practical terms, how to communicate, how to manage my state, my feeling state while that communication was going on, because the kind of passion that you might have when you punch the table, or when you're trying to rally the team on the football is not the same. And it's also a different audience, so I'm basically trying to say I had a lot of work to do, but I did a lot of work. I didn't just come to where I am now without pretty much training every day in areas that I had to nominate myself, right? I said, I need some work in this area. I need to do something about it. The organization where we built it was Merchants, it was called when it was sold. That organization that we sold had one of the most astonishing training programs in communication skills. So the leadership, in my opinion, was really far-sighted because they understood that we had to make most use of the people that we had and their particular attributes. So we would do things, we would, how do you ask for money? If you're not used to asking for money, we'd practice. We'd practice asking for money. We'd practice informing. We'd practice inviting. We'd practice simply repeating what the other person said. Now, these sound really, but if you say something and say to the other person, what did I just say? The chances of them saying what you just said are nil.
Yeah.
So this becomes really important in a sales, in a commercial situation or customer service situation or a management situation. Are you actually able to listen to the other person and know what they're talking about? I don't know how I quite got onto that, but is that okay?
Yeah, no, I think you've touched on a lot of points there, and I think unpacking that it would be really interesting. You're spot on when you talk about working within a team, and I think I always find, and I'm a huge football fan, and that's why I always find creating an analogy around a football team is usually the best, primarily because, as you mentioned, one person in that team that doesn't turn up can destroy the equilibrium of that whole team and how that team works. And that it really does translate into business, right? And if you have a team of 18 players, for example, you look at Man United when they were winning every single trophy and fundamentally had a captain like Roy Keane. They won the treble, they never die attitude, and they scored a record number of goals past the 90th minute. That's not a coincidence, right? After a certain point, it becomes no longer a coincidence and it becomes the DNA of that team. And that's because the team is working in a way where they don't give up. They go to the end. Everyone believes in each other. Everyone will die on the field with each other, work hard. They'll lose more than they win when it comes to those. If they got 10 90th minute goals in 100 games, 90 of those, they didn't get it to win. In those 10, people will remember that. And so the way I unpack that is with regards to in a business environment, in a team, this is all about, and a company is all about the people within that company and how they work together and whether they can work together and building a team that can actually move in the right direction. But also you spoke about the fact that in a sales environment, communication skills are very, very important. And I would even say that communication skills are very important in just life in general, right? Whether that's business environment, sales environment, or just in your day-to-day life. But what you said there with regards to asking for money and practicing that, and also in terms of repeating what people said, we always say internally when we're training our clients on sales and actually how you would close, that you get to the ask as quickly as possible. The sale starts at the first ask. You can do all the pitch you want. The sale doesn't start until you make the ask for the money essentially, and then get the objections to deal with the objections, right? And you need to be able to do that. Active listening is a huge aspect. Again, it sounds like you guys were ahead of your time in providing that kind of communication skills that still ring true to today, which tells me more than anything that people and humans are fundamentally the same. It's just about understanding how, and people will always need help with communication. It's not the easiest thing in the world. And quite simply, there are a lot of things that you need to be able to do to become relatively successful in business as a business owner. And then that's where the personal development item comes in, because you need to be able to stack lots of different skills to be able to be that that fully developed individual in the 10 years time or the 5 years time. And that journey starts at you having no skills and then being willing to put yourself out there to go, okay, I'm weak here. Let me learn more about this. Let me develop this. Let me develop that. And you kind of grow into that. So I think it's really interesting, some of the things you've said there. So talk to me more about the clients you have and the CEOs you work with and the CEO bottleneck that you typically see when working on strategy.
Okay, so so the purpose in working in strategy, which is, what we work in, is to have a certain type of conversation, because the CEO in their job brief, it says strategy.
Uh-huh.
And strategy is building the long-term value of the business, if that's kind of my understanding of it. And I've got a kind of a mixture of people from Financial Times 100 companies to friends of my daughters, right? So mainly private sector and some charity, some what I would call high-profile charities. So I spent a long time working on a strategy with Eden Project, which I don't know if you know, but it's down in Cornwall. And I spent a long time sort of decoding what their natural abilities were that created the project so that we could move it on to the next stage. So, the abilities that create business as a slightly different energy to those abilities which manage a business.
Mm.
And if can't make that distinction, what you find out is that there becomes a rub at some point. So you've got a startup, you've got great energy, you've got a great idea. It's chaotic. It's going really well. No systems to speak of, right? And then when you're getting some management and it's in a different rhythm, it's like the drum beat in a band, right? Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. You need that kind of rhythm. And it's the people in the business want that kind of rhythm. They don't want the chaos. So you have to kind of make a separation between where you are in your life. Are you in startup? Are you building? That sort of thing. This is kind of, it's difficult to say. I get asked, I very rarely get asked to do a strategy. That's what we deliver, right? What happens is that someone in charge of a business is thinking, I need some fresh input. Can't quite work out what's going on. I mean, it's obvious if there's a problem, like customers are walking out the door and you're about to go bust, then that's a kind of identifiable issue, and it's an emergency type situation, a bit like in the NHS, right? So you go, right, okay, we need to sort this out now, we need to operate now, we need to make these decisions now. And providing that people cooperate with that, you can save a business, but not everybody believe it or not, wants to cooperate with that. The issue, regardless of the size of the business, is in this area of for me anyway, is in this area of communication. So you have, let's say you have a medium-sized enterprise, an established board, an established management team, and you would think that they're working towards the same objective. Now, I'm going to say something that, probably won't surprise many people, but there's not a tremendous amount of clarity about this thing called strategy and direction in a business. There is not a tremendous amount of clarity. And even though these are very skilled people that you're working with, they don't necessarily have the how to work it out. So when you are working with them, there's quite a lot of education taking place in that this is how to work it out. If it's in the area of, yeah, okay, that's a model, I understand it, I'm going to use it, fine, you're doing all right. But the answers are often personal rather than so-called objective. Try and think of an example where the CEO might have to accept that they not only don't they know how to work it out, and so you have to be very careful here. This is not one of the, I don't know how people, this is not like kick and rush, this is not, they have to be vulnerable to the fact that they don't know. And the people who get up there are vulnerable in general to the fact that they don't know. And they have enough humility to say, I don't know. And they don't want their faces rubbed in it while they're not knowing. They want to be handled carefully. And they're willing to acknowledge that they might be stuck on something, that it might be that that their thinking is colored by their identification, their kind of prejudgments about certain situations. And they therefore need tools to be able to walk that path and think it through and come to their own conclusions about whether they do have a blind spot or whether they're absolutely convinced that they're going in the right direction. I don't know if that sort of helps it. So this thing is, now, if they don't have that humility, you've got a war on your hands, and this will manifest itself in the management team and at the board level. Now, people are not very good at listening to each other, right? And even the best of friends are not very good at listening to each other. So I've worked in high kind of heavy investment startups where good friends have done it. They've been together for 10 years, right? But if you listen to them speak, you can tell that they don't listen to each other. They've got, some things work, but right now they've hit a difficult period. If you actually work with them, you think, well, you're actually not listening to each other. And this is where things come unstuck. So they have different languages. So we have very brief diversion. We have a sensory system. We use it. We see, we hear, we feel. Everybody can tick that box. They go, yeah, I know, we see, we hear, we feel. Yeah, but do you know that person organizes their life that way? Do you know that they organize their values that way? Have you really listened to their values? Have you spent 2 hours listening to a person tell you what's important to them? Do they know what's important to them? Has anybody ever listened to them for 2 hours? Because the kind of cut and thrust of business isn't that. You haven't got time, kind of thing. But the way to get to a good strategy is to go back to the internal world to find out the kaleidoscope of little things that are important that actually make up why this person moves. And because it doesn't matter once you know how they're moving, they're going to duplicate it in everything that they do. They haven't accidentally come to who they are. Yeah. They've worked it out with every interaction all the way through their life. Right. So if they're going to give up on that, it needs some careful exploration. And they need to see something better. Now, this is the dynamic that's playing out interpersonally. So it's back to that starting point in sales. Can you ask for the money? The starting point here with these people is, can you listen? Have you got a question where you can listen to actually what is making their heartbeat? Now, you need a structure to do that. They're not just going to waste their time, right? But there are structures, there are methods, methodologies, if you like, around where they can, in the right circumstances, give away their precious jewels because they don't want to give them to someone who's going to be cruel. So listen, now we're talking about relating, right? And the depth of relationship and the ability to have these kind of conversations seems to me to be the eureka bit. And if they can navigate that after they've crossed the bridge, they go, oh, yeah, that's not a problem now, right? I can laugh at that now. But if they can't cross the bridge, they will destroy the business because they're capable. They will destroy the business. And I've seen it. I've seen them actually put their pride before their willingness to have a conversation because they think that they can have a conversation. Look what they've done. So all right. So I say to get in the door, you're saying, tick, I've got business models, tick. I've worked with clients. They've got business results, tick. My friend thinks you're okay, tick. And then once you're in there, in my opinion, it's kind of got nothing to do with that when you're shaping strategy. The person at their most vulnerable gives you the most valuable information. And if they're willing to go there and be that most vulnerable, they're going to get something magical for their business because what they're going to die for is what's important to them. These are values now that people have this conversation every day, values. They go and get them out of the encyclopedia, but they come from their heart. And everybody can have it. There's a context big enough. You can have a context big enough where everybody can be developing themselves within the context of the organization, right? And we don't have to exactly, we've got to be on the same page, but we don't have to, we can have different values in a way, as long as they fit the broad sort of church, called humanity. So I will get asked, a person in charge of a FTSE 100 said to me, I'd like some new ideas around communication. That's how it started. So it always starts a little bit formally. Another person said, I want to go deep, not wide. I remember that. So, which is very appropriate when you're working with us, because we want to go deep, not wide, because we want something to last, right?
Yeah. That's
if you think about your parents, they go deep.
Indeed they do. Yeah.
They know how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And we've kind of got to learn, we have to learn that, right. Okay. It takes a bit of time and investment.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've touched the nail on the head right there. And we always talk internally about when we speak with our clients and partners, it's there's two things you need to solve for to win any kind of business and work with anyone. And that is trust and relationships, right? You build the trust, but you said, oh, this person knows me, or I've done this, or X, Y, and Z. And then the relationship comes in once you're in there and you build that relationship. It can come in beforehand as well. But people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so if you have those three, chances are you've got the relationship, and it's a case of building that relationship. You've got the trust. It's a case of building that relationship. I think it's really interesting you mentioned that, because when you have those things, someone is more likely to have their guard down and put their guard down, to be more humble and have a bit more humility in understanding, okay, well, I have got it this far on my own or with whoever, the team or whatever, but to get to the next stage, I don't know necessarily if I'm going the right direction. And understanding that internally, and then going outside of yourself and going, okay, where is the answer? Because I want to move forward. I think it's really interesting what you've said there. This segment of the podcast we like to call the Entrepreneur's Room. And that's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders think and operate when running their business. So at this stage of the podcast, I always like to ask the same question, which is, how are you currently spending your days as the leader of the business?
Working out AI, actually, as the leader of the business. Well,
Sure.
I've got a lot of attention on AI, not because I want to do it, because it's just I need to know exactly how much labor saving. Is it an opportunity? It's clearly an opportunity, but I'm doing a lot on AI, on spending my day thinking about the business. And I'm also something else, which is I'm thinking about is how to there's another level in leadership available to us as human beings. And what I'm spending my time thinking is, how can we, because I know the tools exist and I know the tools, some of them, and how to have that conversation on a wider level, particularly so men can step beyond their pride, particularly so men can stop this process of identification where we've got to have a fight before we can walk past each other, because there are 7 stations on the train line. And 6 of them most people know about. But the 7th one involves a degree of surrender to a new skill. And the Eastern people know about this. And it's kind of it's not new. I'm not saying this is new. They know about it. They know how to do it. They know about the awareness. They know the route to it. And particularly in Western society, and particularly with men, there is somewhere else to go. So the next level of leadership is not yet in the business schools, it's not yet in the common discourse. And I am thinking, how can I get that to happen?
Amazing.
Right? That's what occupies me.
I can imagine it. It's a thought process that needs to be, you need to spend some time thinking about it to be able to find the answer. Amazing. As a leader of the business, what are the most important metrics for you when...
Most important metrics of the business?
Yeah.
Profit, loss, cash flow.
Perfect. And I love nice, succinct, and straight to the point. You know exactly profit, cash flow, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because it's not fashionable to make it. We need to change that particular. A business can't exist unless it actually makes more money than it spends. Those are the most important. Those are most important for every client that I work with. And then every client that I work with, we look at the figures, right? Every client, and then we move on to other. Once we know there's profit and there's cash flow, and then we can move on to some other things.
Absolutely. The most important thing in business is to make money first, and then you can then grow and invest in wherever you need to. And at the end of the day, in terms of then growing your business. How are you currently growing your business? What kind of business development activities are you doing to grow the business?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not terribly successful at this at the moment. And so I have a YouTube channel. So I'm looking at awareness and I'm looking at certain types of subjects. And I've decided I need to get a bigger, broader awareness for the kind of subjects that I'm talking about. And I'm exploring those specifically through YouTube. So I've got a channel with a few hundred videos on it, right? And they cover issues like how to do a strategy, and they cover issues like pride and men and things like that. But I'd say at the moment, I have to say it's not successful. Is that a terrible thing to say?
No, it's not. It's a very honest thing to say, but I think there's a lot of things out there that people say, this is the way you do it, this is the way you do it. But the best way you can find out what to do is actually going out and trying it and then going, okay, then the strategy element comes in, right? Where it's like, okay, how does it work? Because it works for other people. It doesn't necessarily, so it's figuring out what it is. But I love that. I love that you mentioned that. Okay. And in terms of then, you've been a business owner for many, many years. You've exited businesses. You've got many lessons along the way. What's the biggest lesson you can share with us today?
The biggest one. So one's a bit external facing and the other one's a bit internal facing. Internally, you have to take care of your own character. No one else is going to do it for you. All right. So when I first started work at 21, whatever it was, and I was a young man, and I went to work in London, which for me was like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
I remember the feeling when I first started working in the city as well.
Right. Okay. I've got, oh my God. And I had all these elder men around me who had their ways of doing things. And I gave up on myself. I said, okay, I'm going to do it their way. I'm going to do it. And they must know better. And it was a bad mistake. Right. And 10 years later, I paid, so really nurture. I'm not talking about the personality, because that's made up. Our personality is just, as Shakespeare says, but that kind of internal world which sources you really needs some attention, and it will be there all your life. So take care of it.
I love it. Love it. That's a really great piece of advice and something that we've not heard before, but I resonate with that. You need to lead with who you are and be true to who you are. And I completely agree with that.
Always.
Yeah, always. Joseph, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Saeed. Yeah.
I like to end every single podcast with the same question.
No.
If you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
Men cooperating with each other.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. It's very appropriate to what you've been speaking all about today, so I love it. Joseph, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. You've been a fantastic guest and some great insights there. For all those out there who might want to reach out to you, contact you, how would they find you? Where would they go? Email Joseph at zeteticmind.com. I'll spell that zeteticmind.com, or website zeteticmind.com. Or YouTube. The address is too complicated. We'll put it in the show notes. Okay. No worries at all. Joseph, thank you very much again and have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed, Saeed. Bye for now.